Rick and Morty is the ultimate adult teen animated show which actually touches on every boy's dream life. I can promise you this show alone has brought back many a number of adults back into their cherished cartoon days, just by being amazingly spontaneous. The show started premiering on Cartoon Network late-night block Adult Swim in 2013, and as of December 17, 2023, 71 episodes of Rick and Morty have aired across 7 complete seasons. And today we are going to cover all those 71 episodes, so hit that like and subscribe buttons and get ready. But first, let me explain to you the main characters in the show. Let's start with Rick Sanchez, the mega genius scientist whose alcoholism and reckless nihilistic behavior are sources of concern for his daughter's family, as well as the safety of their son, Morty Smith. Rick's loyal sidekick is the grandson Morty, who is often forced to tag along on his various misadventures while attending Harry Herpson High School. Morty is an incredibly anxious and submissive teenage boy who is too nervous and awkward around girls like all of us once did, right? Summer Smith is the big sister who has some personality traits of a typical American teenager as she wishes to be popular among her peers and finds the antics of her family to be dysfunctional, though she still cares for them. She's very attached to her phone and social media, just like all the girls out there these days. Jerry Smith is the father, but he is often noted as somewhat of a loser. He constantly attempts to find a career to no avail, leaving his wife Beth to be the breadwinner of the family. Rick always belittles Jerry, and even his children don't take him seriously. The mom, Beth Smith, is characterized by a superiority complex and abandonment issues. And surprisingly, she brings most of the plot twists throughout the seasons, although she appears to be boring. In the very first episode, Grandpa Rick, in a drunken state, takes his grandson Morty for a ride in his flying car and rambles on about how he plans to use a neutrino bomb to wipe out all life on Earth.
That's absolutely crazy!
Rick lands the vehicle on Morty's demand and passes out. But ultimately, it is shown that life on Earth remains intact. After having breakfast with their family, Rick takes Morty to another dimension to collect seeds of mega trees, which Morty is forced to hide.
And I'm gonna need you to put them way up inside your butthole, Morty.
In my butt?
However, Rick and Morty's cover is blown, and they escape while engaging in a shootout with alien insect soldiers. Ultimately, the seeds briefly cause Morty to be highly intelligent. This causes his parents to believe he is fine with his education, but this wastes the seeds, so Rick informs Morty that they need to go back and get more, while their after effects leave Morty writhing on the floor. The second episode begins when Rick gives Snuffles, the family dog, an intelligence-enhancing helmet on Jerry's request. Rick and Morty, in an Inception-like scenario, enter the dream of Morty's teacher.
Allah Akbar! We're gonna take control of this plane! We're gonna 9/11 it!
They are chased by a dream character named Scary Terry. They manage to enter his dream, where they stand up for him against his bully teacher. This persuades Scary Terry to help them complete their mission. Meanwhile, at home, Snuffles builds a mechanical suit and assembles a dog army intending to take over Earth. Returning home from their adventure, Rick and Morty enter Snuffles' dream, where Rick causes Morty to fall into a coma. This prompts Snuffles to rethink his priorities, resulting in him taking his army to another planet. On Christmas, Rick sends Morty inside the body of a homeless man to save his life.
Welcome to Anatomy Park!
Morty and one of the park staff, Annie, flee from the rampaging diseases as they kill the rest of the base staff. Rick rescues them by enlarging the homeless man's body to the width of the U.S. before destroying it in an explosion. Back at the family home, Jerry's parents visit, and the family attempts to bond without electronic devices. Aliens hold Rick and Jerry captive in a virtual reality in an attempt to steal Rick's recipe for concentrated dark matter. As Rick attempts escape, he discovers that there are multiple virtual reality layers on top of each other. Rick finally games the aliens by giving them a fake recipe. The aliens send Rick and Jerry on their way, and their ship explodes as they prepare the fake dark matter. Yikes. Rick and Morty step into a Jack and the Beanstalk type of adventure. Morty decides to steal the giant's treasure and give it to the villagers. The giant dies by accident. Rick and Morty are charged with murder but are ultimately acquitted. Rick and Morty then descend from the giant's beanstalk realm and stop in a fairy tale pub on the way down. There, King Jellybean attempts to rape Morty, but Morty escapes. Rick wins money playing poker and gives it to the villagers. As Rick and Morty are leaving this dimension, Rick kills King Jellybean, having figured out his attempted rape of Morty. Meanwhile, Beth, Summer, and Jerry use Rick's Meeseeks box to spawn Meeseeks, blue creatures that fulfill one request and then explode. Jerry summons one Meeseeks to help him improve his golf game and spends some time training to no avail. The Meeseeks summons more of them to help, resulting in an increasingly larger crowd of frustrated Meeseeks. They decide to kill Jerry, but given one last chance, he ultimately demonstrates that his skills actually have improved, and the Meeseeks are happy to disappear. Morty is interested in going to the dance at his school with his classmate Jessica, so he asks Rick for a love potion.
I love you so much it burns!
Oh, man!
Jessica has the flu, the potion becomes airborne and goes haywire, causing not only her but the whole population of Earth to fall for Morty, save for blood relatives. Rick attempts to fix up an antidote, but he fails twice, ultimately causing all humans affected by the love potion to turn into mutated monsters called Cronenbergs, just like the famous director David Cronenberg. Meanwhile, Jerry visits Beth in her workplace because he is concerned about her fidelity, and they find Summer later. Rick and Morty then migrate to another dimension where their duplicates died soon after successfully curing all of Earth, thus allowing Rick and Morty to assume their roles. In a pawn shop in space, Rick buys Morty a sex robot. Soon after, the robot conceives Morty's alien hybrid child, whom he names Morty Jr. Rick and Summer go to the sex robot's planet of origin, Gazorp, to find better-suited parents for Morty Jr. Rick and Summer learn that the males of this species mature in only days and are, by nature, extremely violent. The Gazorpian females arrest Rick due to his open misogyny and threaten to execute both him and Summer until Summer reveals her fashionable top was made by a man, convincing them to let them go free. Meanwhile, Morty Jr.'s quick aging puts pressure on Morty to try and raise him. When he realizes Morty lied to him about the heir, he gets into a fight with Morty until Rick arrives and prepares to kill Morty Jr. Morty steps in the way of Rick's weapon, telling him he still loves Morty Jr. Morty Jr. decides to move out and live on his own while channeling his aggression into a creative art. As the family watches The Bachelor, they see Jerry on TV
It's a pleasure to have you.
The pleasure's all mine.
as a successful actor in an alternate reality. The family, minus Rick and Morty, uses Rick's goggles to see through the eyes of their duplicates in that alternative reality, where Jerry and Beth have successful lives, they never married, and Summer was never born because Beth had an abortion. Jerry, Beth, and Summer have a heated discussion in which they conclude that family life is holding them back, and Beth admits that Summer was an unwanted pregnancy. Summer feels unloved and plans to run away, but Morty tells her that he and Rick themselves came from an alternate dimension and persuades her to stay. Summer works in an antique shop which is run by the devil, which gives away items that come with harmful curses. Rick sets up a competitor shop where he uses science to remove the curses, and the devil is put out of business. Summer helps him to relaunch a successful .com company, but he betrays her and keeps the company for himself. Summer and Rick build muscle mass and publicly beat up the devil to get revenge. Meanwhile, Jerry, helping Morty with his homework, insists that Pluto is a planet. They are abducted by Plutonians to their world, where Jerry is mistaken for a scientist. His statements about Pluto being a planet make him instantly popular, but it is later revealed to him that Pluto is shrinking due to corporate plutonium mining, and the Plutonian leadership keeps the population distracted by assuring them Pluto is still a planet. Jerry tells the Pluto citizens the truth on a public speech, causing him to be hated and deported back to Earth with Morty. The show's original, Rick is wrongfully accused of murdering 27 Ricks from alternate dimensions and kidnapping their respective Mortys.
Yeah, I'd like to order one large person with extra people, please.
White people. No. Black people.
Trans-dimensional council of Ricks arrests him and finds him guilty. The Smith household is flooded with other Ricks, and Jerry develops a friendship with the good-natured doofus Rick. The real culprits seem to be an evil Rick and his evil Morty. They capture the original Rick and Morty, but the original Morty leads a rebellion of alternate Mortys and releases the original Rick. Rick informs the council about the real killer, thus clearing his own name. After they depart, the council discovers that evil Rick was actually under control by an unknown puppet master, which was evil Morty all along. Jerry and Beth participate in a reenactment of Titanic, but the ship unexpectedly fails to sink. Jerry spends some time alone with Lucy, a female janitor who eventually proves to be a deranged fan of the movie, forcing him to imitate scenes with her at gunpoint. She almost rapes Jerry, but Beth saves him. Meanwhile, Rick is left in charge of Morty and Summer, but they have a large party.
I'm having a party, bitch!
Among the guests are teenagers, aliens, Gearhead, Squanchy, alternate Ricks, and Aberdolf Linkler, a DNA combination of Adolf Hitler and Abraham Lincoln. But the whole house is accidentally sent into another dimension, where Linkler seemingly dies. Ultimately, the guests are sent away and the house is returned to its place. Rick, Morty, and Summer only have minutes to spare before Beth and Jerry arrive, so they use a contraption to freeze time, allowing them to repair the house. They also watch Titanic and unanimously agree on how terrible it is.
First movie ever.
Oh boy, what a waste of time. What? What kind of monster are you?
A competent one?
The next season starts and continues from the last season's Rixie business, as Rick, Morty, and Summer spend 6 months repairing the house and screwing around with time frozen. After unfreezing it, the trio ends up in a decaying dimension. They split into separate timelines whenever they are uncertain about something. Rick becomes paranoid, thinking that his duplicates want to kill him, but eventually he calms down. A creature in charge of safeguarding time appears and gives them collars that integrate all the timelines, then attempts to arrest them because Rick stole the time-freezing crystal.
You stole a time-freezing crystal from testicle monsters?
Rick, Morty, and Summer show uncertainty on purpose and break the collars, splitting into 64 timelines, and they simultaneously beat up the same creature. In one timeline, Rick attempts to sacrifice himself and let Morty live by giving him his collar, but ultimately he survives too. Rick takes Morty on a trip to teach him how to pilot the flying car. When Rick realizes that Jerry has followed them without being noticed in the back seat, he leaves him in a daycare specifically designed for Jerrys from alternate realities. Jerry socializes with other Jerrys, some of them left there indefinitely because their Rick and Morty never returned. Rick sells an antimatter gun to Chrombopoulos Michael, an alien assassin.
They take their balls and they dip them in cocaine and wipe them all over each other.
Rick plans to spend the day at the Blips and Chits video arcade, but Morty decides to stop the assassin. After Rick and Morty release Fart, they are chased by the authorities. Fart uses telepathic powers to kill the authorities, which also leads to civilian casualties. Morty then kills Fart using Chrombopoulos Michael's antimatter gun. Rick and Morty return to pick up their Jerry, but it is left unclear whether they got the right one. Alien parasites plant fake memories in the minds of the Smith family and pretend they are friends and family members. The family can't distinguish real people from aliens, so eventually they can't even trust each other.
Who the fuck are you?
My goofy brother Steve?
To prevent further spread, Rick locks down the house. They are soon joined by other aliens, including cousin Nikki, Sleepy Gary, who poses as Beth's husband and Jerry's lover, the family butler, Mr. Beauregard, Frankenstein's monster, a talking pencil named Pencil Vester, Tinkles the fairy lamb, and Mr. Poopy Butthole. He is an unusual yellow creature who did not appear in any previous episodes but appears to be a longtime friend. Just total chaos with the weird relationships. Eventually, they kill all the aliens. As they sit down to dinner, Beth shoots Mr. Poopy Butthole, thinking he is a parasite as well. But he turns out to be real. A massive alien head appears over Earth demanding to hear an original song, so Rick and Morty improvise Get Swifty.
Shit on the floor. Time to get swifty.
The whole planet is abducted and forced to participate in a musical talent show, where the losers' planets are obliterated via plasma ray. Morty steals Rick's portal gun and leaves him alone with Ice-T, the only musician to survive an earthquake that struck the Grammy Awards, to make a hit original song and save Earth. Morty stumbles across Bird Person, who persuades him to go back to Rick. Ice-T is revealed to be an ice alien who does not initially care about Earth, but he later changes his mind and saves the planet. Rick, Morty, and the US president win the competition by improvising Head Bent Over.
Giant telepathic spiders, 11 9/11s, and the best ice cream in the multiverse!
Rick's flying car will not start, so he and Morty investigate the problem. The car's battery contains a miniature universe, and Rick has been threatening their destruction if they do not generate electricity. Inside it, Zeep Zanflorp, that universe's top scientist, created a second miniature universe for the same purpose. Rick, Morty, and Zeep are left stranded in a third miniature universe as the pilot commits suicide and destroys his ship. Rick and Zeep constantly fight, and Morty abandons them and becomes a native chief. Morty forces the two scientists to work together to escape. While escaping, Rick reveals that Morty can turn into a car if needed. Ultimately, Rick and Morty leave the battery, trapping Zeep. Zeep is forced to discontinue his miniature universe research and have his people resume generating electricity to prevent Rick from destroying their universe. Meanwhile, Summer is forced to stay in the flying car, which uses violence to keep Summer safe from strangers, while she protests. Rick becomes Tiny Rick by transferring his mind to a teenage clone of himself in order to kill a vampire in Morty and Summer's school. Tiny Rick is outgoing and popular, but subconsciously cries for help in song lyrics and drawings. Much to the disdain of her classmates, Summer deliberately gets him expelled by denouncing him as the killer of the vampire coach Ferratu. Morty and Summer eventually persuade Rick to return to his body. Meanwhile, Jerry and Beth experience couple therapy on an alien planet. Two manifestations of the partners' perceptions of one another are created. Jerry's Beth is embodied as a towering, hostile, xenomorph-like insectoid, and Beth's Jerry is a servile worm. Beth goes on a rampage with the help of the worm Jerry, killing several couples and employees. Eventually, Jerry acts in a brave way, causing Beth to envision a strong Jerry, which in turn envisions a goddess like Beth, who destroys the insectoid monster. Rick and Morty visit another planet to purchase wiper fluid and witness the festival, an annual event where the local populace commits crimes for one night without consequence. After initial hesitation, Morty forces Rick to rescue Arthricia, a young alien girl who proceeds to betray them, stealing Rick's gun and spaceship. Rick calls Summer, who transports them advanced armor suits. Morty then goes on a seemingly uncharacteristic killing spree before Rick knocks him out.
Screw you, Rick! I'll purge you too, you old rickety piece of crap!
And he and Arthricia, who desired to stop the festival, storm the castle of the corrupt nobility who introduced it, slaughtering them. The planet's remaining inhabitants decide to create a new society. Rick and his family attend the wedding of Bird Person and Tammy, whose guest list includes 17 of the Federation's most wanted, including Rick and Bird Person. At the wedding reception, Tammy reveals herself to be a Federation agent and kills Bird Person. Numerous agents invade the building, starting a battle against the guests. Rick gets his family out of the wedding safely, but they are unable to return home as the Federation would be looking for them there, so Rick takes them to a terraformed asteroid. Rick overhears Jerry proposing to turn Rick in and return to Earth, so Rick allows himself to be arrested. His family returns to Earth, which has joined the Federation and is crowded by alien tourists. Jerry is assigned a job by the Federation. The second season ends with an unexpected twist.
Jerry, get out of the booth, take all your clothes off, and fold yourself 12 times.
You got it.
Rick is interrogated via a mind-computer link inside a galactic federal prison. Summer and Morty attempt to rescue him, but they are captured by SEAL Team Ricks, who take them to the Citadel of Ricks and decide to assassinate Rick. Back at the prison, Rick repeatedly switches bodies with both the federal agents and his aspiring assassins to reach the teleporter room of the Citadel of Ricks. He then teleports the entire Citadel into the federal prison, prompting a massive battle. Amid the confusion, Rick rescues Morty and Summer and uses the Galactic Federation's mainframe to make its currency worthless. This causes the Federation to collapse and leave Earth. Rick, Morty, and Summer return home, where Jerry gives Beth an ultimatum to choose between him and Rick. Beth chooses Rick and the couple decide to get a divorce. Rick reveals to Morty that his ulterior motive was to become his de facto male influence and get revenge at Jerry for threatening to turn him into the authorities. Rick takes Morty and Summer to a post-apocalyptic version of Earth, where they are chased by a group of scavengers known as Death Stalkers. Rick notices that the group is carrying a valuable rock of isotope 322, so he and the kids join them in hope of stealing it. Summer falls in love with the Death Stalkers' leader, while Morty is given the strength of a giant arm, which takes him in search of its previous owner's killer.
Booyah! Fuck you, pal! Who else wants some?
Rick leaves and replaces the kids with androids to fool Beth. When he returns, he helps the Deathstalkers use the isotope to power a more advanced civilization. Summer does not like how the change softens the Deathstalkers, and she decides to follow Rick and Morty back home. Before leaving, Rick steals the isotope. Rick turns himself into a pickle to get out of attending a school-sanctioned family therapy, but Beth takes Rick's serum, which would revert the transformation.
Fuck you.
Mom!
Fuck both of you two.
Left alone, Rick eventually rolls into an open sewer drain, where he manages to manipulate the nervous systems of dead roaches and rats to build himself a mobile exoskeleton with added weapons, such as razors and drills. He unwittingly escapes into a foreign government agency. The guards try to kill Rick under orders from the agency director, but Rick kills them all. In the process, Rick battles and ultimately befriends a prisoner named Jaguar. Near death and in need of the serum, Rick is forced to attend the therapy session, arriving towards the end. At Morty's insistence, Rick agrees to meet again with the Vindicators, a group of intergalactic superheroes to fight their arch-nemesis, World Ender. Rick cannot hide his disdain for the superheroes while Morty is thrilled. The next morning, the Vindicators enter World Ender's base. They find that while Rick was blackout drunk the previous night, he killed World Ender and set up a variety of puzzles that the Vindicators must solve to survive.
God damn!
They start arguing and kill one another while Morty solves all the puzzles. The only ones left alive are Rick, Morty, and Supernova, who is a member of the Vindicators. Supernova tries to kill Rick and Morty. Before she can do so, the three of them are transported to a party that Rick also set up while blackout drunk, and she escapes.
There's no time for pants, Jerry. I'll make you a pair of pants on the way. It's a Rick and Jerry adventure.
Rick takes Jerry on an adventure to bolster Jerry's self-esteem. They visit an alien resort where Jerry encounters Risotto Groupon. Risotto enlists Jerry in a plot to kill Rick, but the attempt fails. After Rick kills Risotto, he softens his attitude towards Jerry but refuses to let him return to the family. Meanwhile, Summer's boyfriend Ethan leaves her for a larger-breasted girlfriend, and Summer attempts to enlarge her own breasts using one of Rick's devices. Her aim is off, and her and Beth's attempts to fix things only cause her to be turned inside out and grow into a giant. Beth is tricked into releasing 3 tiny technical support workers that were trapped inside the machine. Summer disappears to the campsite she and Ethan were supposed to go, still inside out. Once Morty figures out how the machine works, he restores Summer's size and spitefully uses it to deform Ethan.
Shh! Careful, Ethan. Your s'more is burning.
As Rick and Morty adventure to Atlantis, the episode shifts focus on the Citadel, a secret society populated by numerous versions of Rick's and Morty's. There, a group of Mortys journey to a portal to have their wishes granted. A novice police officer, Rick, starts working with veteran police Morty to take down drug dealers. A worker, Rick, revolts at a wafer factory, where the key ingredient is extracted from Rick hooked up to a machine to re-experience his best memories, and an election is held for the new president of the Citadel. Despite being the underdog, the Morty Party candidate manages to secure the presidency. When his campaign manager receives information that the new president is in fact evil Morty, he attempts to assassinate candidate Morty but fails. Once he assumes office, President Morty orders the execution of a shadow council of Ricks. Rick and Beth enter Fruppyland, a fantasy world created by Rick for young Beth. Their goal is to recover Tommy, Beth's childhood friend who has been trapped in Fruppyland. Tommy, who has survived all these years by resorting to bestiality, incest, and cannibalism, refuses to return to the real world.
But Tommy's still in there raping Muppets and eating babies.
Yep.
Rick and Beth manage to save his father's life by creating a clone of Tommy. Back at home, Beth is presented with the option of having a replacement clone of her created so that she will be free to travel the world. Meanwhile, Jerry dates an alien hunter named Kiara, to Morty and Summer's dismay. When he decides to get out of the relationship, Kiara is enraged and tries to kill the kids, whom she holds responsible. The situation is later resolved peacefully. The president calls on Rick and Morty to defeat a monster in the tunnels underneath the White House, which they do with little effort. Annoyed that he constantly calls on them without any gratitude, they go back home to play Minecraft, with the president quickly finding out. The resulting argument leads to a battle of egos that culminates in a fight in the White House between Rick and the president's security. Meanwhile, fearing she might be a clone made by Rick, Beth reunites with Jerry to figure out the truth. Shortly after, the entire family gets together to hide from Rick, but he tracks them down. Rick eventually submits to Jerry once again being a family member. Rick ends his conflict with the president by pretending to be a Rick from a different reality and calling a truce. The final episode of Season 3 ends with the family happy to be together again, except for Rick, who is disappointed about losing his dominant position. The season begins as Rick takes Morty to an alien planet to harvest special crystals that can show the holder all of their possible future deaths, and Morty takes one without Rick's knowledge. Upon seeing one of his possible futures dying old with Jessica,
Jessica, I want to die with Jessica.
Morty begins taking whatever action would lead to that future, resulting in him inadvertently killing Rick. Rick then appears and instructs Morty to collect Rick's DNA so he can be cloned and resurrected. Morty refuses to clone Rick. Meanwhile, Rick's consciousness is routed into clones of alternate universe Ricks. All of the alternate Ricks end up being fascist and hostile, except for Wasp Rick, who agrees to help. Morty, meanwhile, causes chaos as he kills numerous people and uses special ferrofluid to turn himself into a cyborg abomination to pursue his desired future. Rick, Wasp Rick, and Holographic Rick team up to turn Morty back to normal. The ferrofluid then bonds with Holographic Rick, causing him to become hostile and forcing Wasp Rick to kill him. Jerry and Beth are angry at Rick, but Morty takes responsibility for the damage he caused. Seems like Morty has stepped up after all. Rick leaves the house for his personal toilet since he is a private pooper. While Rick is gone, Jerry disobeys his explicit instructions and asks Rick's new intern Gluty to develop an app for him. Gluty develops a matchmaking app that Jerry names Love Finder or Z. Beth attempts to block Summer's relationships due to her still being underage. Morty forces Gluty to take him and Jerry to his mothership, where it is revealed Gluty's species plans to use the app to distract humanity while they invade Earth for its water. Meanwhile, Rick finds out someone else used his toilet and tracks down an alien businessman named Tony, who admits his guilt and points out they are both private poopers. Despite many threats, Rick never follows through with killing Tony, and when he dies in an accident, Rick provides Tony's father with a means to clone him. It's then revealed that Rick prepared an elaborate holographic routine that would have insulted Tony the next time he used his toilet. After being pestered by Morty to get him a dragon, Rick reluctantly makes a deal with a wizard, who creates a soul contract between Morty and the dragon Balthamar. Meanwhile, Jerry encounters a talking cat in his bedroom, but Rick insists he has nothing to do with it. The cat convinces Jerry to take it to Florida to find fun at beach party, but the cat betrays Jerry by accusing him of defecating on the beach. However, the cat only ends up annoying everybody at the party, resulting in it getting kicked out along with Jerry. Morty tries to play with Balthamar, but it is clear Balthamar doesn't like Morty, which frustrates him. Angered at Balthamar stealing Morty's attention, Rick tries to kill the dragon, but they both end up realizing they have much in common and inadvertently soul bond.
You have bested me. I am at your service.
Wizard then arrives, accuses Balthamar of being a slut dragon, and takes him away to be executed. Rick helps Morty rescue Balthamar, since the soul bond means he will die if Balthamar does. With the help of other slut dragons, Rick and Morty are able to rescue Balthamar, kill the wizard, and break the soul bond. Now uncomfortable with how sexual dragons are, Rick and Morty part ways with Balthamar. Rick makes Jerry lighter than air, and makes Jerry's shoes heavier than air to act as an anchor. However, Jerry later loses one of his shoes, which causes him to float away and get lost.
Siri set a 9-hour and 50-minute timer.
Playing the Beatles.
While traveling through space, Rick's spaceship gets a flat tire, which requires Rick to stop to repair it. Morty disobeys Rick's order to stay in the spaceship and is bitten by a space snake. Feeling guilty, Morty secretly replaces the dead snake astronaut with a regular snake and drops it off at the snake planet. Later, time-traveling robot snakes arrive at Morty's house to try to protect and kill him. With help from a future version of himself, Rick travels back in time and leaves the secrets of time travel to the snakes earlier in their timeline, which eventually results in them abusing time travel enough to attract the attention of the time police, who destroy their civilization by eliminating their first intelligent ancestor. Jerry manages to make his way back home, but ends up injuring himself like Rick predicted. Rick and Morty then meet their future selves as well. Rick and Morty find out that they have been mind-controlled by face-hugging parasites called the Glorzo. Rick and Morty manage to fight their way off the planet, causing mass destruction.
I've seen your Pornhub account. Also, who makes a Pornhub account?
However, upon returning home, they realize they left Summer behind and return on a rescue mission, only to find that Summer does not have a Glorzo attached to her and is worshipped as a goddess. She was spared due to a toothpick in her mouth, which prevented the Glorzo from being able to latch onto her face and caused them to consider her a goddess. The three of them attempt to escape, but are blocked by the rest of the Glorzo. Rick then uses a tune from Morty's harmonica, which triggers the Glorzo's host body to lay its implanted egg, resulting in the death of both the host and the controlling Glorzo. All of the Glorzos are killed. Upon returning home, Rick and Morty start feeling severe stomach pain. Fearing they're about to lay Glorzo eggs, the two say their final goodbyes to each other, but it turns out the pain was from a regular bowel movement. Now that's soothing. While on a mission, Rick and Morty trade special gems with alien gangsters. The gangsters betray them, and Rick fakes his and Morty's deaths by jumping into a vat of fake acid. Morty grows impatient,
Jesus fucking Christ, enough already!
accusing Rick of having a bad idea with the vat of acid. Now that's some balls on this young man. Rick grudgingly agrees, creating a special remote. Morty then commits numerous crimes and pranks and resets himself to avoid consequences. Eventually, though, Morty falls in love and starts a relationship with a young woman. When they end up stranded in the wilderness, Morty considers using the remote but calls for rescue instead, wanting to preserve the relationship he has. After Morty is rescued, Jerry accidentally presses the remote, resetting Morty back to before the relationship started. Morty fails his attempt to restart the relationship when his save point is accidentally overwritten. Rick then reveals that the remote does not reset the timeline, but instead teleports Morty to an alternate dimension. Now horrified, Morty begs Rick to undo everything, so Rick merges all of the alternate dimensions. While this prevents the deaths of the alternate Mortys, everybody remembers the crimes Morty committed, and the only way he can escape is to jump into a vat of fake acid to fake his death. Rick has finally taught his lesson, it seems. A clone of Beth is shown leading a rebellion against the new and improved Galactic Federation. After a battle, she is treated by a doctor who discovers a device implanted in her neck, causing her to believe she's the clone. On Earth, Beth and Jerry go to family counseling at Dr. Wong's, while Morty and Summer fight over Rick's invisibility belt. Beth confronts Rick, who reveals that the other Beth also has a device in her neck and claims she is the clone. The Federation soon arrives at Earth, demanding Space Beth be handed over. Rick accidentally lets slip that Space Beth might in fact be the clone, and races to Dr. Wong's office to save Beth from Tammy and a squad of soldiers who have mistaken her for Space Beth. Rick, Beth, and Jerry rendezvous with Space Beth, and both Beths are now mad at Rick for his refusal to disclose which is the clone. They are again attacked by Tammy, who takes the Beths prisoner and beams them up to the Federation's ship. Morty and Summer intervene, and Rick kills Tammy. The family heads to the ship, with Rick going to free the Beths while Morty and Summer shut off its super laser before it can annihilate Earth. In the aftermath, Rick retrieves the memory tube containing his memory of creating the clone Beth. After admitting to himself that he is a terrible father, Rick tries to be a good friend instead and fix Phoenix Person, only to be aggressively rejected. Rick is left alone and distraught at the end of this season. The 5th season begins with the crash landing of Rick's ship in the ocean. Morty unexpectedly talks Jessica into a date. Unfortunately, landing in the ocean provokes Rick's nemesis, Mr. Nimbus, king of the ocean and controller of the police.
I am Mr. Nimbus! He's gonna say that a lot.
Morty attempts to have a normal date at his home with Jessica, while also helping Rick host a dinner party to placate Mr. Nimbus. In the process, he accidentally meddles with the history of an alternate dimension where time moves orders of magnitude faster than on Earth. Religions develop that depict Morty as a legendary figure of doom. Just as Rick and Mr. Nimbus resolve their differences, Summer returns from executing Rick's orders, inciting Mr. Nimbus to beat up Rick and have him arrested. Jessica decides to stay friends with Morty. Her outlook on life changed profoundly from being imprisoned for eons by the alien society.
It's a big day.
We're gonna kill God.
Come again?
Rick, Morty, Summer, Beth, and Jerry are having breakfast when alien squid assassins kill them. They are revealed to be decoys, and the real Rick is alerted to their deaths. However, the real Smith family is revealed to also have been decoys, and struggle to figure out which family is the original. For the original, Rick did not realize the decoys would resort to making more decoys. After a family of decoys clashes and kills another, they figure out that the squids are actually further decoys trying to kill all other versions of themselves. Another family, who still thinks they are real, are kidnapped by deformed decoys trying to harvest their skin but are rescued by wooden decoys, who attempt to rally a group of decoys but are crushed to death when squid decoys kill them. One family alerts all decoys to their location and all of the decoys are killed in the ensuing mayhem. Meanwhile, the real Smith family, on an adventure with Space Beth, are alerted to the decoys' deaths. Okay, now this one is going to blow your mind. Rick unknowingly uses Morty's sperm to create giant sperm monsters.
I spent a week pleasuring myself with animal equipment.
The president works with the Smith family to destroy the sperm monsters and pinpoint them in the Grand Canyon. Rick and Morty destroy the Sperm Queen's base of operations and follow the remaining sperm monsters to Las Vegas, where the government has placed a giant human egg from Summer, unaware that the sperm is Morty's, to attract the sperm. Once Morty reveals the sperm is his, the US military, Vegas performers, and the horse people destroy most of them, but one abnormal sperm, named Sticky, gets to the egg and fertilizes it before it launches into space. Oh my God! Rick uses Jerry's social ineptitude to inflict pain on, and thereby pleasure the pain-enjoying hell demons to repay a debt Rick owes them. Jerry refuses to cooperate with the demons, which leads the demons to kidnap him to hell. Beth and Rick save him by disguising themselves as demons.
You're so gross.
You have to like it or you're sexist.
Meanwhile, Morty and Summer try to impress high-status new student Bruce Chutt back by hijacking the space cruiser and taking it on adventures. But they are found out by the car's AI, who blackmails them into going on even more life-threatening adventures. They try to appease it by setting it up on a date with a group of shape-shifting robots called Changeformers. But after the space cruiser is exposed as not a legitimate Changeformer, a brawl ensues in which the space cruiser kills the Changeformers. Morty, Summer, and Bruce are arrested, but are then rescued by the space cruiser, brought back home, and forced to act like nothing had happened. Morty releases a giant robot from the Statue of Liberty after accidentally destroying the Constitution of the United States in a hidden crypt.
You little bitch, you destroyed the Constitution.
Rick tries to obtain a turkey pardon from the president by disguising himself and Morty as turkeys, but the president, aware of Rick's schemes, turns himself and other military volunteers into turkeys to stop him. In the chaos, a turkey is accidentally infused with the president's DNA and takes his place. The president, his forces, and Rick and Morty join forces with aliens and robots kept in stasis in the crypt to overthrow the turkey president and his turkey enforcers. Rick is granted a pardon for his aid in the resistance. This one is for all our guys out there, as Rick, Morty, and Summer are on a space trip to Boob World when Rick spots a crashed Gotron ferret, completing his collection. Deciding to use the ferrets to fight giant bug monsters attacking other worlds, the entire Smith family serve as pilots. Summer feels like Rick appreciates her more than Morty, while Morty tries to help Summer see that Rick cares only about the Gotrons. Rick had already replaced her with an anime girl named Kendra. Unbeknownst to Rick, Kendra commands the original Gotron pilots of the other universes, seeking their ferrets back. After Summer is fired, she reveals that her giant incest baby Naruto is alive and she helped him escape from the military. The family returns to Rick, and with Naruto's help, they save him from the original Gotron pilots. After the rescue, Rick grows tired of the Gotrons. Morty accidentally spills portal fluid on his hand and finds himself able to speak to Nick, another man who spilled Rick's portal fluid onto himself.
You got some of that green stuff on you too, huh?
This is bad. This is really bad.
They become friends, and Morty breaks him out of the psychiatric facility in which he is confined. However, Nick shows himself to be a violent psychopath who spilled Rick's portal fluid after he had tried to steal the portal gun from Rick, and he pursues Morty, intending to make him his accomplice on a crime spree. After a violent chase and struggle, Morty has a train slice off his hand and puts it in Nick's portal, causing Nick to implode. Meanwhile, Rick teams up with two crows to show Morty how disposable he is, but after an adventure wherein they save him from anthropomorphic crows attempting to savage Earth, he realizes they are more than just disposable alternatives to Morty. After repairing Morty's hand, Rick leaves him behind to travel with the two crows, leaving Morty devastated. This will hurt Morty for a long time. Rick abandons his life of adventure with the crows when he discovers he is their rebound.
What do you mean using me as a rebound?
He meets Morty at the Citadel, but they are accosted by Rick agents who take them to see President Morty. There, President Morty reveals that he has used brain scans taken from Rick to create a path outside of the central finite curve. Flashbacks reveal Rick's backstory. After an alternate Rick murdered his wife Diane and a young Beth, he invented his portal gun to scour the multiverse for their killer, creating the curve before reuniting with Morty's family. A group of Ricks joined forces to stop him as he killed countless Ricks, eventually becoming the Citadel. President Morty reveals that he is tired of the abuse that all Ricks within the central finite curve will invariably inflict upon their Mortys. He hacks all the portal guns in the city, causing widespread death, then flees in an escape pod. Rick, Morty, and a group of survivors jettison themselves from the Citadel, which along with the curve is destroyed by a black hole created by the hacked portal guns. President Morty steps into a yellow portal to an unknown destination.
Ooh-wee, evil Morty.
We kick off from where we left off last season and saved from the Citadel ruins by Space Beth.
Been drinking a lot of my piss.
Rick attempts to reset the settings on his portal gun, but accidentally sends everyone who has traveled through dimensions to their original dimensions. Morty returns to Cronenberg World, and Rick is transported to his original universe, where his wife Diane and his Beth were killed by Rick Prime, who is Morty's true grandfather. As Summer and both Beths travel back to the Citadel to establish an interdimensional beacon, Rick rescues Morty and takes him to confront Rick Prime, but finds an elaborate trap. Morty convinces him to save the rest of the family instead. However, once the family picks up Jerry and returns home, they are confronted by Season 2 Jerry, who releases an alien named Mr. Frundles that rapidly replicates and forces the family to relocate to a replacement dimension where their counterparts all died. This family is a mess, Jesus.
I'm 17. No, I've never seen fucking Die Hard.
Die Hard-inspired alien terrorists attack the Blips and Chits arcade and cause a temporary power outage. As a result, Morty becomes trapped in the virtual reality game Roy. Rick enters the game, playing as the titular Roy. Rick builds millions of spaceships, planning on taking all the fragments to the edge of the map, which will reset the game and allow Rick and Morty to exit. However, Rick faces resistance from many Morty fragments, some of whom go to war with each other. One individualistic fragment, Marta, negotiates with Rick. Meanwhile, Summer picks off the terrorists, led by Chance, one by one. Summer reads one of Chance's books, then defeats him with a gun taped to her back just as Rick and Morty escape Roy. Rick pays a Blips and Chits staffer to take the still-running Roy machine into storage, with Marta left behind inside. Space Beth comes back to celebrate Thanksgiving. She and Beth bond over a bottle of Venusian wine which Space Beth had brought back from Venus. Eventually, their casual flirting develops into a full-on love affair.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Summer and Morty notice, but try to ignore it by playing realistic alien video games. Rick deduces the affair after he and his grandkids catch them pulling a San Junipero in his holodeck. When Space Beth admits to the affair to Jerry, he rolls up into a pill bug. Both Beths ask Rick to erase their memories of the affair. Jerry overhears this and exits his pill bug form to stop the erasure, but says he is leaving Beth. He and the Beths have a threesome to Summer's and Morty's disgust. After Space Beth leaves, Rick locks the Venusian wine in an invisible cabinet and destroys its key remote. Rick obtains an alien device called a somnambulator that allows him to voluntarily sleepwalk, creating a night person who does tasks that he does not want to do in the daytime.
Okay, fine, fuck it. Everybody gets a night person.
The rest of the family create their own night people who exercise, learn new skills, and do household chores. The escalating conflict between the Smiths and their Knight family over the dishes ends with Night Summer and her minions locking Rick out of his own technology, building a giant version of the somnambulator to maintain permanent control of their bodies. The Smiths attempt to escape with the help of Knight Jerry, and a chaotic battle ensues as both sides fight for control by tranquilizing and waking each other. Night Summer offers a truce in exchange for Rick washing his dishes. Rick refuses, and as a result, Summer allows his night person to retake control of his body.
Oh no, he's here again! Morty Protocol, children!
A technologically advanced species of dinosaurs arrives on Earth. Many people, however, are dissatisfied with the lack of responsibility, including the president, who promises to let Rick host the Academy Awards if he can get rid of the dinosaurs. Rick and Morty visit other planets that the dinosaurs have tended, finding that they all suffered asteroid impacts similar to the one that caused the Chicxulub crater. Rick announces that dinosaurs have a rival species of homicidal sentient asteroids, one of which is headed for Earth. Rick hosts the Oscars but leaves when Summer tells him the dinosaurs are on Mars, awaiting their demise. He travels to Mars and tells the dinosaurs that selflessness and selfishness are the same, prompting them to destroy the asteroid. In thanks for Rick saving them, the dinosaurs fix the temporal rift, much to his dismay. Rick returns home and repairs his portal gun.
Poop world!
Damn right, and it's Areola week.
Oh, all right!
Hopefully, it will all be the same again for the duo. Tired of attacks from supervillains, Rick goes to Dr. Wong for advice. She recommends that he ignore them.
You don't shoot Batman in his fucking Batman logo!
A villain named Pissmaster goads Rick into battling him, which Jerry does in his place when Pissmaster makes a sexual remark about Summer. The incident goes viral, and Jerry is invited to sit on a council of intergalactic superheroes, much to Rick's jealousy, until Dr. Wong points out that Rick is now free of burden. Rick is happy at first until he discovers Pissmaster committing suicide, having left a note blaming Jerry. Rick dons Pissmaster's suit and performs many heroic deeds, redeeming the villain's public image. The council sends Jerry to offer Pissmaster a seat among them, which Jerry reluctantly and forcefully attempts to do as Rick disarms a bomb by sacrificing Pissmaster's suit to cover his suicide with a heroic death. Rick lies that he was Pissmaster all along to make Jerry feel better about himself, but secretly gives Morty the real Pissmaster's suicide note. Horrified, Morty promptly tells the rest of the family, who berate Rick for his actions and shame Jerry for Pissmaster's death. While waiting in line for food, a Knight of the Sun offers Morty his knighthood.
3 crispy, 4 wiggling.
You're probably not even hungry.
Morty goes to the Sun and is told that he must sever his penis to join the Knights. Morty refuses and attempts to leave. Opposed by the King of the Sun, he bests the king in combat and becomes king himself. Without the Knights' influence, a peace summit among the leaders of the planets fails and a war breaks out. Morty finds the Knights of the Sun using heroin and inspires them to resume their duties by promising he will cut off his penis, Rick having built him a fake. The war ends and all the planets accept Morty as king, but have set up various machines to expose his fake penis, forcing Rick and Morty to fake their deaths. For Christmas, Rick gives Morty a working Star Wars lightsaber,
You beautiful son of a bitch!
which he accidentally drops perfectly vertically. This causes it to tunnel into the Earth, threatening to destroy the planet if it reaches its core. During their quest, Morty is aided by the President, who then steals the lightsaber. The President accidentally drops the lightsaber in the same manner, forcing Morty and Rickbot to retrieve it. In the ensuing confrontation with the President at the White House, Rickbot is mortally injured, and the three are sucked into space, but Rick rescues them with a portal. Rickbot succumbs to his injuries and tells him he was only doing what Rick would have done in his place. As the President takes his leave, Morty joins Rick in his underground lab, offering to help him locate Rick Prime. After his divorce from Amy, Mr. Poopy Butthole stays over at the Smith household, but the Smith family grows tired of his uncontrolled alcoholism.
I agree, Beth. I'm a piece of garbage.
Rick gathers his friends Gearhead, Squanchy, Bird Person, as well as neighbor Gene in order to stage an intervention. Rick and his friends quickly end up partying with Mr. Poopy Butthole instead, and are eventually joined by Hugh Jackman. They are shocked to find out Amy is in a relationship with Gulkarna. Mr. Poopy Butthole attempts to kidnap his son while Rick and his friends beat up Gulkarna. Mr. Poopy Butthole realizes he's setting a terrible example for his son and returns him to Amy and Golkarna. After Rick and Jerry argue over whether Rick was born intelligent, Rick swaps their minds to prove his point.
I'm gonna put my mind in your brain, and your mind in my brain.
Rick in Jerry's body commits suicide in horror, while Jerry in Rick's body accidentally kills himself with Rick's cybernetic enhancements. Rick's medical robot heals them, but the process ends up with both Rick and Jerry possessing half of each other's brains. Meanwhile, Morty is captured by alien gangsters who realize their mistake and apologize to Rick. The half Rick and half Jerry go to pick Morty up, but their bickering causes the gangsters to sense weakness and attack the trio. They are able to fight their way back home, but the half Rick and half Jerry realize they are happier the way they are now and run away to go on adventures together, naming themselves Burger and Fries. When the gangsters kidnap Morty, Beth, and Summer, Burger and Fries realize they are still responsible for their families.
Burger and Fries, who the hell is this?
They combine their bodies into the composite being Cherokee and rescues them. Afterwards, the Smith family force Cherokee to separate back into the normal Rick and Jerry, and they go back to bickering with each other. Oh, what a relief is that. Rick serves the family spaghetti.
Oh yeah, you like that? That's some good spaghetti!
Which Morty accidentally discovers is sourced from a planet where people's bodies turn into spaghetti if they commit suicide, but not if they die any other way. Feeling guilty, Morty reveals the truth at a funeral. After this, the planet's president legalizes suicide, and spaghetti becomes the planet's primary export, with most people channeled into suicide to be sold as spaghetti to meet the demand. Rick has one last terminally ill person commit suicide on a live broadcast and offers his spaghetti to Morty. During the broadcast, he shows everyone the man's entire life, causing everyone to vomit at the horrors they are committing, turning everyone off spaghetti. Later, Rick serves the family Salisbury steak, warning that its source is also horrifying. The family laughs this off. This episode opens by showing evil Morty's backstory. Having grown tired of demeaning adventures with his Rick,
You think you know everything, Rick, but you're basically just a giant 8-year-old.
Evil Morty implanted devices to control Rick. His peaceful retirement outside the central finite curve is interrupted by Rick and Morty's search for Rick Prime. Evil Morty confronts Rick and Morty, and all three are captured by Rick Prime, along with other Ricks whose wives were killed by him. After surviving a gladiator match with the other Ricks, they find Rick Prime and learn he built the Omega device, which he used to erase Rick's wife Diane, and demonstrates by summoning and erasing Slow Mobius. Evil Morty incapacitates Rick Prime and steals and deactivates the Omega device before allowing Rick to beat Rick Prime to death. With Rick in no mood to go on any adventures, Morty tries to encourage him by cashing in his Morty Adventure cards. Rick enlists the aid of an omniscient alien rock called the Observer to audit the adventure cards.
I am the Observer!
You're so busted. Look at your face. You're so fucked.
As the Observer shows them various past adventures, Rick and Morty eventually get fed up with him, treating their lives like a clip show and tell him to leave. However, the Observer returns and begins harassing the entire Smith family by showing clips of their most embarrassing moments. Morty loses his temper and strikes the Observer, inadvertently killing him and inciting the anger of the other observers to put them on trial on whether they are good or evil. In response, Rick hacks their observation technology and shows that the observers regularly abuse their powers for selfish gains, causing the observers to attack each other. Rick and Morty escape in the confusion, and Rick decides to take Morty on a new adventure. Finally, high time for some real fun. After killing Jerry in an experiment, Rick discovers the afterlife exists, and it possesses an infinite amount of energy.
Great, so there's a heaven. Glad you could learn that by murdering me.
Rick and Morty go to Norway so Rick can enter Valhalla, but he has Bigfoot kill him as he must be killed by a great warrior. Rick enters Valhalla to harvest the energy, only for Morty to arrive having been killed by Bigfoot. The Vikings, believing they're witches, attack Rick until he convinces them he is an Odin. Meanwhile, Bigfoot chases after a feral clone of Rick only to be captured by the Pope, who uses him to kill all the church's enemies. When Rick and Morty return, Bigfoot cuts a deal with them to stop the Pope. The Pope, having gained the energy from the afterlife, kills them, but they revive using Operation Phoenix, making Bigfoot a human in the process. After failing to stop the Pope with the help of the universal monsters, Rick tricks the Vikings into pulling the plug on the energy after they escape, stripping the Pope of his powers. After Rick traps the Pope in a pokeball, Rick and Morty send Bigfoot back into the woods, despite the fact he's human now. Rick and Morty find that after all of their experiences, there is nothing that can scare or surprise them anymore. They are then approached by a man in a suit who offers them a truly terrifying experience, bringing them to a fear hole located in a Denny's bathroom. Morty decides to leap in to face his fears, only for Rick to jump in after him to rescue him from monsters.
Oh man, we both shit our pants! What a fucking ride!
Upon returning home, Rick and Morty realize that they're still in the fear hole. However, no matter how many times they seemingly leave the fear hole, they never truly escape it. After their latest failed escape attempt, Rick offhandedly mentions that Morty is irreplaceable, which causes Morty to realize he's not talking to the real Rick, and that Rick never followed him into the fear hole to begin with. Morty comes to the realization that his true fear is Rick leaving him. Upon overcoming his true fear, Morty finally escapes the fear hole. Rick is tempted to jump in himself after hearing that the fear hole can manifest Diane, but ultimately decides against it and leaves behind a picture of Morty to commemorate his conquering of the fear hole. So by December 17th of 2023, that's all the episodes that we have in the show so far, and it has been one hell of a ride.